Like we have a couple guys that are naturally talented. They come in and they just excel, whether they do 2 days a week or 5 days a week. But uh, I really appreciate the people that show up day in and day out more than anything else. I tell my guys, I want to help everybody out, but I shouldn't want it more than you want it. I shouldn't be the one pushing you all the time. Like you should be the one pushing. You should be the one coming in. You should be the one showing up all the time. Like, especially if you want to be a high level competitor, if you want to be a local competitor that just does it for fun, again, it doesn't matter. But if you want to achieve something, you shouldn't be missing training to go out and hang out or miss it because the weather's nice or this or that. Like guys who are serious don't fucking miss training for that.
Welcome to Forever White Belt. I'm your host, Adolfo Ferranda. On this episode, I'm joined by Shawn Melanson, a jiu-jitsu black belt, highly respected instructor, and the owner of Precision Jiu Jitsu in New Hampshire. Known for his incredibly refined and effective teaching style, Shawn is a coach's coach, a technician with a deep understanding of wrestling for BJJ integration, and a powerful advocate for intelligent grappling. Shawn has become a go-to resource on BJJ Fanatics, where his instructional series, like Precision Wrestling for Jiu-Jitsu and Precision Attacks and Sweeps from Butterfly, Half, and Knee Shield, have helped practitioners around the world level up their game. In this conversation, we talk about the evolution of his style, how wrestling has shaped his jiu-jitsu, his approach to coaching, and what it means to develop high-percentage techniques that hold up under pressure. We also dive into training culture, competition prep, and modern grappling. Shawn is not only a phenomenal technician, but a humble, thoughtful, and sharp mind in the jiu-jitsu space. And with that, I give you Shawn Melanson. Shawn, welcome to the show, man.
What's up, brother? How are you?
Good. It's so awesome to have you on. We had Alex, your sort of co-patriot, co-founder, co-owner, whatever you want to call him, on the show. He's a fantastic guest.
Yeah, 100%.
You told me about you. I was fascinated with your gym Precision. And initially I stumbled onto Alex's content, right? And I was like, wow, his jiu-jitsu is really something. And then I saw the academy that he was training in, and wow, what a bunch of savages. Definitely very high octane type of academy it looked like, in terms of maybe it's the clips I saw or whatever. Can you speak to that?
Yeah. So basically the whole reason we opened the gym is because New Hampshire's kind of a small community. Where you don't have like, it's not California, you don't have the big populations, you don't have even a ton of like you even New Hampshire, you don't have a ton of like higher level athletes that come out of the state. You're not getting NFL football players and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, there is a decent competitive scene, and what I felt like we were kind of missing in this area was a specifically competitors gym, right? And that's not to say that other gyms aren't doing well with their competitors, just everyone is still more focused on the hobbyist aspect because at the end of the day, that's what makes money, right?
Uh-huh.
And it totally makes sense to me from a business perspective, but for me, I just needed, me and Alex were talking about it for a long time. We just needed a space where we could try to bring a bunch of people together that wanted to compete and elevate to that next level of jujitsu. Have that younger crowd. Our demographic in our gym is relatively like 19 to 35, where yeah, a lot of the gyms you go to around here, the demographic is honestly like 35 to 50 plus, whatever. And we did really well working with those guys, but we just figured, if we wanted to get to that point where we could compete on a national level, we would need to be able to have a space where we could kind of put in that extra work.
You'll have to forgive me when I refer to these things as products, because I see like you're offering as a separate product than what you're sort of alluding to, right? The older, maybe a little bit slower type of academy, and that's why I refer to you guys as high octane. But really, yeah, you're right. I think a better descriptor is a more competitive approach type of academy, competitive focused.
Yeah. And I would say it's not that the older guys can't fit in. We do have some older people, some moms, some dads, some people that aren't maybe at that younger competitive level that they just fit in just fine. It was really about just taking, especially no-gi jiu-jitsu, specifically to that next level because
Hmm.
there were a lot of the gyms, it's kind of changed now since we've opened, but a lot of the gyms were like, okay, it's 5 days a week gi and you get your
Hmm.
2 days of no gi,
Yeah.
right? Whereas like we were doing no-gi 5 days a week, especially when we decided like that was going to be our goal. Like Alex has always kind of been a no-gi guy, but me, I did both all the way up until black belt. And then finally I realized like I'm 30, well, whatever it was back then, 29. I'm 29, kind of got to focus on one or the other and decide what I'm going to do.
Uh-huh.
And that was, yeah, a lot of those were just determining factors on opening the gym, as well as just providing our own space, providing our own atmosphere, and providing like something a little bit different than what was around.
I want to talk about your jujitsu, because I've watched quite a bit of your jujitsu. I want to talk about what I really enjoy. I mean, you're good all around, obviously, and you're a very strong individual. Well, just for the listener viewer out there, can you give us your specs? What do you weigh? How tall are you?
Yeah.
A lot of people want to know that kind of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So I'm 5'7", 205, and that's kind of the heaviest I've ever been. So I've always competed between 170 and 185.
Oh,
I
okay.
mean,
So you're like a
yeah,
mid-range kind of guy. You're
yeah,
not like a massive monster. Okay.
no, I'm not giant. I decided well, like my wife is pregnant. I decided to just kind of get as strong as possible during that time. So that's why I've kind of had the weight gain where I got up to 205 and I was doing a
Mm,
bunch of lifting, a bunch of eating. But my plan is to go back and compete at trials at 170 pounds.
gotcha.
So
Wow.
I just started doing cardio again, so I plan on getting my weight back down. And the big thing is the way they changed the weigh-ins to 24-hour before weigh-ins. You're going to see
Hmm.
a lot of guys now cutting from
Yeah.
195, 200 pounds to 170. It'll be like the
Yeah.
UFC.
Yeah. That's going to be rough. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Me,
don't know
I mean,
about
my
that.
plan is to get back down to 185 and then kind of cut from there.
From there. Yeah. Good
Yeah,
idea.
I think that's a pretty safe cut. I mean, I used to fight 155 and I even fought 145 and I cut down from about 178. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of used to that. A little bit older. I think it's a little bit harder as you get older. I'd like to, just get more lean, but that's why I stopped doing cardio for a while. Now I've kind of re-implemented cardio and doing that distance running, and hopefully that weight starts to shut off. If at the end of the day, if it doesn't, I'll go up at 88. But my thing is doing an 88, which is 194 pounds. Those guys are going to be like 6'2", 6'3", 220 when they step on the mat.
Yeah. That's going to be rough. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In that respect. Not that you can't do it, but yeah, it's just a
No,
different
it's
game
just it's definitely
strategy.
100% different game.
So, what is it like being an active competitor and academy owner? That must be tough. How are you implementing your training into the sort of curriculum, or how are you sort of partitioning the two off, or what?
Combination of both. When I'm actively competing, I kind of push it all into one. I haven't been competing with the baby. Before that, I was a little bit more. I've never been, as a competitor, I've never been the most active competitor,
Hmm.
morely because it's just a financial pain in the butt.
Yeah, yeah,
That's always been my biggest struggle is, it's been hard to afford the travel and all that stuff. I would love to compete more, and that's kind of my goal coming up. I just turned 32. From 32 to 34, I just want to compete a lot now that the baby's here and I've really invested into jiu-jitsu, um, and taken the time to open my own academy as well as just make the connections with BJJ Fanatics and stuff like that. I really want to push forward with a bunch of competing this year, and hopefully I can make that happen. But when it comes to the gym itself, it's kind of a combination of both because luckily we have so many competitors in the gym. It's like I can kind of push it all together. I am really focused on being an instructor and a good instructor. So I do take that time to watch all my students as well as make sure all their techniques is correct, while finding the time to get my training in and the hard training I need as well in. So I kind of do a combination of both. Some nights I'll train really hard, and then other nights I'll sit back and I'll kind of watch the guys and kind of correct where they're making mistakes, or just kind of look back on what I think they need and where their holes are, and then we can kind of plan our quote unquote curriculum to that. Because I don't run a specific curriculum. I kind of see where the holes are and I kind of adjust and move as we're going.
Now, I want to talk about your use of legs and your footwork. Some of the things I've noticed with some of your grappling, and it's a lot. Oftentimes, people don't think of this kind of stuff, and aside from like leg attacks and that kind of thing, right? And the throwing up triangles and whatever it may be,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah.
But what I see you often do are things like little sweeps and trips and things like that,
Yes.
where you're actively using your feet and even placement. Sometimes I'll see you use it almost like hands in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is that something you've like actively sort of studied or trained or what?
One of my big things was when I was a purple belt, I got to film with BJJ Fanatics and Gordon Ryan when he was filming his seated guard DVD. And he probably tripod swept me, I don't know, 15 times repeatedly and just made me feel kind of dumb on the feet. And it was like one thing that kind of stuck with me that, like, all right, if you can kind of make someone feel dumb while they're trying to stand and pass guard, it's really effective to getting to your sweeps and other positions, right? Because in Nogi especially, like you really need to be able to stand to pass effectively. And if you can never stand comfortably, it makes it really, really hard to pass. So that's kind of been my angle on it. And I've really focused on those foot trips and the timing and stuff like that. It's taken me a long time to develop that game, but
Mhm.
once you do, it's so effective and it's so much fun.
Yeah, I bet it's definitely, calls for highlights and things like that. It makes it look really,
Yeah.
really good. Wow, guest, that was really interesting. But did you know throughout history, salt has been highly valued and commonly used as currency? Warriors and sailors were sometimes given rations of salt for their wages. If they were worthy, they were said to have earned their salt. Salt Electrolytes drink mix is designed for today's warriors, athletes, and those who get after it and work up a sweat regularly. If you're eating healthy, drinking plenty of water, and working out, you need to replenish your electrolytes. With a light, refreshing flavor, salt is great to drink during your workout because it will not coat your mouth with a thick film. Salt contains 6 different electrolytes, with a touch of iodine to help maintain a healthy thyroid. No sugar, no color, no BS. Go earn your salt. And on top of that, if you use code FWB, how much should we give you off? 5%? 10%? Nah, 15%, just because we're friends. Now go get it. Salt Electrolytes. Well, let's talk a little bit about precision attacks and sweeps from butterfly half and knee shield. So as of this recording, it is out. I saw it's on BJJ Fanatics. What is it, and can what can what can we get out of it in terms of practitioners and students, and to what levels?
Yeah, I'm really excited about this instructional. To be honest, Fanatics released them backwards. They were supposed to release Seated Guard and Wrestling up first because it kind of plays into that other DVD. Not a big deal. You can kind of do it either way. You're still going to get a bunch of good information, but they play well into each other the opposite way, in my opinion. Because it's mostly like doing the frustration of the feet, wrestling up, causing your opponent to be frustrated to the point where they come down to the mat and kind of play into that half guard butterfly type stuff. And I'm really excited about these instructionals because I took the time to like really think about the fact that in my last two, I think I did a good job, but I didn't feel like I was speaking to beginners, right? I was thinking about people with a little bit more experience. So I really tried to dial it back and really give the most amount of information that I could, really break it down to the fine details and even kind of some of the real basic stuff that sometimes we skip past as advanced practitioners and don't really think about, those guys who maybe know nothing or have 6 months of experience. But yeah, what I did is I packed those just full of information. A lot of butterfly, sumigashi stuff. Did a ton of attacking from the overhook, from bottom half guard, which I don't think you see a ton of right now.
No, you don't. Yeah.
Yeah, and using mirror locks and straight arm locks and that clamp style across the back, which is something that a lot of people see Craig Jones do, but they don't really break it down and see what he's doing with that like step over the back clamp. You're seeing more and more of it, especially from the scrambles where guys are catching that underhook and overhook and jumping into the triangle. You're seeing that, but
Mm-hmm.
actually attacking that arm in the overhook
Yep.
position with either a mirror lock or a straight arm lock and turning that up into multiple different submissions. You're not seeing that so much yet, but that's the game I'm really trying to develop and get good at.
Yeah, it's so effective. Yeah, and I see that you got like deep half like galore in there too, and all kinds of great stuff.
Yeah, so I use a lot of deep half, not as classic deep half entries where you're going for, your waiter sweeps and stuff like that, but more I use deep half a lot to enter the legs. That's basically what I use deep half for in Nogi. And then sometimes to enter X guard and then X guard sweeps from there.
Yeah, it seems like deep half is not one of those positions you want to just park in. You know what I mean?
Not in Nogi, just because like I think what makes it effective in the gi is being able to pass lapels or use grips. Because everyone that puts me, I can't say I've gone with a world class deep half guard player in Nogi, but everyone that puts me in deep half Nogi usually ends up in some type of Kimura because you can't actually
Hmm.
grab onto anything. And
Hmm.
that's what makes it tough. I've never seen anyone use deep half effectively since, maybe like Jeff Glover back in the day.
Hmm.
But the
Right,
game
Ryan
has
Hall or
changed
something. Yeah,
so, yeah, it's changed so much back from, when those guys were doing it.
yeah.
It's just evolved a ton.
Totally. And as you mentioned, primarily gi stuff. Yeah. I heard you before discussing this sort of deep half and sort of the older style of teaching. Can you define what you mean by that? Like, so I know deep half was like one of the examples you gave.
Yeah, I just think, I think it's still wildly effective. It can be wildly effective in like gi, especially if you start to enter like waiter guards and stuff like that. I just think, that a lot of people kind of use deep half as a like a go-to place where they can rest or either move. And there's some great sweeps from there in the gi, but it just hasn't translated over time, in my opinion, to no gi. And I just don't think it's a very super effective position. Don't get me wrong, there's some cool stuff you can do there, especially if you can enter the legs. Or even I showed on my Instagram recently, this guy Jar Beam, he was able to get this knee bar off from there. He even did it on J Rod at I think like a grappler's class. Or no, they must have been a nog, I think. But either way, this guy's pretty good. Yeah, I think he's coming. He's got a match coming up on UFC Fight Pass too. I didn't know much about him, but Alex actually showed me this cool knee bar from that deep half entry, and it's pretty effective. Alex showed it to me, and I was able to do it on like seven of my teammates in one night. But like the actual going to deep half and kind of using it classically, I don't see it as effective in no gi.
Hmm.
Just my opinion. Could
Hmm.
be. There could be some guy out there that would make me look stupid. I don't know. But that's just my personal opinion.
Now, when we don't have to get specific about other academies or anything like that, but when you see academies that are sort of, in your opinion, limiting what they're teaching,
Yeah,
what are like what is the sort of the box that you see them teaching,
sir.
of their curriculum, et cetera, that or what they're missing too?
Maybe I don't want to say they're limiting because that puts them, I guess, in a box of like they're taking away from their students, which I wouldn't want to
Good
do.
point.
I just think some people, they got their black belts 15 years ago, and the game's kind of changed and evolved so much. And I'm not saying that their jujitsu is not effective. It definitely can be to a certain degree, but a lot of people just haven't kept up with what the game is today, I guess. With that being said, like I said, I never want to insult any other teams or any other gyms. It's just that the biggest thing is not keeping up with current trends and current jiu-jitsu and lagging behind. And I think if your goal is to be a guy that's just enjoying the gym, kind of just trying to get in shape, does it for fun on the weekends or trains 2 days a week. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. But if you want to be a competitor or you want to keep up or, have a better skill set that you're more confident in, you're probably going to want to seek out a gym that's kind of keeping up with current trends or their competitors are doing well or they're still actively working on their game and evolving on a consistent basis.
So I know that this is your first foray into owning an academy and really being the head coach. And I'd heard you mention that you were kind of learning as you were going along. Obviously, you're a black belt, so you've had a ton of experience watching other coaches and how you may want to or may not want to do stuff. I think more importantly, oftentimes, how are you sort of sharpening that teaching sword? How are you progressing and how are you evolving as a teacher?
Yeah, I'll be honest, even when I started, like when we started Precision, I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be a teacher. I just wanted, a competitive school. And the more I've become a teacher, the more I've actually fallen in love with it. That's why I ended up, starting a social media page to show people techniques and as well as like, uh, just really wanted to be able to grow my ability to instruct. And I think I've done a pretty good job with that over time. I've fallen more and more in love with being an instructor. It's hard because you want to play the instructor competitive game the right way, where like you're not too focused on being a competitor and not be a good instructor. I really want to be able to focus on all my students and help them find the success that they're looking for. And that's something I've really started to dial in since we moved gyms into the new location is really focusing on my students and really helping them evolve their games, really taking the time to like pick them apart and really focus on their needed areas. It's like one thing I never had from my instructors is like you go in right and like it's like okay today we're doing X guard sweeps or we're doing single leg kicks whatever it is. you do your class, you do your rolling, and then like you could always ask your instructor questions, but I've never had an instructor that's been like, "Hey, this is where I see you're kind of lacking. Let me help you. Let me show you where you kind of need to focus on and take the time to show you." I mean, I don't sit there for 3 hours and break it down for him, but I'll be like, hey, in your game, you're doing really good as a guard player. Maybe you should get off your back and focus on that guard passing for a little while and, show them a little bit about where they need to go, where their holes are, especially when I see it in competition, because that's where you see guys regress at their most to what they know, right? So, I really, really try to break everyone down individually instead of just as a group.
Mm.
That's kind of one of my biggest focuses, in my opinion.
Does everyone at your academy compete?
No, nope. It's probably 50% maybe.
Are you actively encouraging it?
Yeah, of course. We're always pushing it. If we can get guys out there competing, we'll definitely constantly encourage competing.
And how do you do that?
Just whatever's coming up. The team also does a good job of it. Like half the time, I don't even know that a grappling industries is coming up, and then we have a big group message where someone will post it up, and then I try to push as many people as I can to do certain ones in certain areas. The one thing about having young competitors is the ability to travel is not always there, but when local stuff comes up, especially like a local grappling industries, Naga, or local super fights, we try to get as many guys as we can on the cards.
So, what's interesting you as of late in jujitsu? What are you playing with now?
Right now, I spent a ton of time working on my guard, to be honest with you. I spent probably the last year and a half really developing my bottom game, and that was all because of a ACL tear. So I've always been kind of a top player wrestler, but my knee's been so unstable that it's made it kind of hard to be like an effective wrestler. My knee's starting to feel better now. I technically need surgery, but I don't know. I still don't know if I'm going to get it. I'm still trying to get through without doing surgery. But it made me really want to develop that bottom game, even if I talk a bunch of shit about guard players. It's usually just as a joke. But I really want to develop being able to wrestle up, attack from the bottom, be super effective. But right now, I've started to focus again back on wrestling, to be honest with you, because I feel like I've taken a step back from wrestling and I really need to kind of push the wrestling aspect a little bit more.
What makes a great student?
Just hard workers. I don't think you need to be super special, super athletic, super talented. You just need to be a hard worker and show up. We have a couple guys that are pretty good and they show up on a pretty consistent basis. I always push them to show up a little bit more. But like, we have some other people. We have this girl, Sarah. I talk about her all the time because she competes a little bit, but she shows up more than anyone else. And she went from like, knowing absolutely nothing. And then over the course of a year, she's developed and become a jujitsu practitioner. And it's been really cool to watch because we've watched her grow from nothing to something, and she's actually doing pretty good for someone who doesn't have natural talents. Like we have a couple guys that are naturally talented. They come in and they just excel, whether they do 2 days a week or 5 days a week. But uh, I really appreciate the people that show up day in and day out more than anything else. I tell my guys, I want to help everybody out, but I shouldn't want it more than you want it. You know what I mean? I shouldn't be the one pushing you all the time. Like you should be the one pushing. You should be the one coming in. You should be the one showing up all the time. Like, especially if you want to be a high level competitor, if you want to be a local competitor that just does it for fun, again, it doesn't matter. But if you want to achieve something, you shouldn't be missing training to go out and hang out or, miss it because the weather's nice or this or that. Like guys who are serious don't fucking miss training for that. At the end of the day. Like those are the like I know who really wants it, who wants to become like high level competitor. And I just like I said, I just really appreciate the people that show up day in and day out no matter what and really show that they want something out of this.
This sounds like a much more sort of, amicable side of you. I'd heard you before discuss how when you were in your 20s or whatever, it sounded like you trained extremely hard, like always showing up, never late. I'm sure you were doing 2 a days or whatever, and your intensity is probably really high. And you may have had those sort of expectations on your students initially. Has this sort of maturity sort of evolved where you realize, hey, people are all on sort of different playing levels?
So yeah, I mean, I was the kind of I would sleep on the mats between classes and train super hard 2, 3 times a day, 6 days a week. Do I expect that from everyone? No. 100% not. That wasn't even my expectation coming into it, and it's lessened. My expectations are usually, I should say, the expectations I have for you are usually set by you, right? So if you tell me you come in, right, and you're like, hey, I want to be a world champion. I'm like, all right, but you know what it takes to be a world champion, right? And then a lot of people don't know what it takes to be a world champion. I mean, even me, I
No,
haven't
they don't.
achieved a world championship, so I don't even know what it takes on, that level. But like, missing class because this or that or, dumb things isn't going to get you there. Now, if you come in and you're like, I just want to learn jujitsu, whatever. I don't have many expectations for why you're there or what you're doing. I'll treat you, basically, I treat you how you tell me you want to be treated, I should say. You know, I think that's a good example. Like if you have these expectations for yourself, I'm going to treat you to that level of expectation. But if you're just there for a good time to learn good jujitsu, you're not going to get pushed as hard as, some of the other guys. Like you see me torment some of the guys in the gym. I push them really hard. I'm hard on them, and it's for a reason. It's because they have these expectations of themselves, and I'm trying to help them meet them, right? Versus like if you're just coming in to have a good time, well, I'm not going to push you and call you out for missing classes or this and that because that's not why you're here, right? So it's coaching to each individual student, just like I talked about with the techniques. Kind of, you kind of treat everyone how essentially they need to or want to be treated.
You kind of touched on it, but what makes a great instructor?
I don't, I can't say. I can't say because I've only been doing it for 2 years now. I don't know if I'm a good, decent, bad, or great instructor. I think I'm doing a pretty good job. My guys are excelling. They're winning at a pretty rapid rate, especially locally here. So I think we're doing a good job with it. I've had some pretty good instructors, like I said, over the years, but I don't think I've ever had a quote unquote great instructor. A lot of good guys that have helped me out and, done some really good things for me. And, that's not a way of talking down about any of them. I love all of them. But what makes a great instructor, someone, that can make people excel past everyone else, I don't know if I exactly know yet. I think I'm still working on that and I'm hoping to be someone who can achieve that. Right. But, to be, if you're talking great as in like a John Danaher or Marcelo Garcia or someone that's, just that next level. I don't know if I know exactly what makes that instructor so great yet without experiencing it myself.
What are your belt expectations?
Again, different from person to person, I should say, seeing kind of what they know, what they can perform. It's like I said, I kind of, just with everything else, I treat everyone kind of on their own individual basis and on what their goals are. I do think that things have changed where, belts are sometimes given away where they shouldn't be. I think, I have plenty of guys that come in brown belt, even black belt level from other schools or other gyms or visitors from other places. And I'm like, well, I don't understand who gave you this belt because you don't even understand basic guard passing techniques. So my expectations are definitely higher than most, in my opinion, but that's something I'm still kind of adjusting to and figuring out as I go. Like I said, I try to keep those expectations really high. We've been open for 2 years and I've given out three, I think four belts. So I'm not the kind of guy that's going to do belt ceremonies where people know what's coming or, have to pay me to get a belt. It's all about when I think you've earned it and I think you're at the level of where you need to be at to get that belt. That's kind of a big
Mhm.
thing for me.
In terms of your jujitsu, what's been your like go-to?
Arm bars, to be honest with you. It's always been arm bars. I remember I was able to arm bar like two of my instructors as a blue belt, and it's always kind of been my go-to submission. Funny enough, I finish a lot of competitions by leg locks, but my go-to submissions and what I know best is arm bars. It's just a lot of the time that like when I'm competing, either people know me and they're avoiding that upper body attack, or leg locks present themselves. And to be honest with you, like there's still a lot of people that are just uneducated on the leg lock game. And it's too easy not to take something that's right there for you.
Yeah, absolutely. What do you find that most people are doing wrong with arm bars?
Isolation of the elbow and control of the shoulder, to be honest. Like a lot of people don't do a really good job at like isolating the elbow, controlling it. And a lot of people like when you think about an arm bar, right, you think about the elbow, right? But a lot of people don't think about the fact that you really need to control that shoulder, right? If they can move the shoulder, a lot of the time they can get their elbow out of those arm bars. So like just complete isolation of that arm. And that's why I've really switched over to, instead of a lot of turning and falling type arm bars, I've really switched into those Utagatami type arm bars where if I can finish on a straight arm, awesome. But if not, then I transition into kind of a classic arm bar. But I really want to make sure that my hips are behind that elbow and that I'm as close to that guy's body as possible. I mean, you could ask Alex about it, or even anyone I've showed arm bars or arm barred before. A lot of people feel like I'm ripping their chest muscle when I'm doing an arm bar versus just attacking the elbow.
That's fascinating. So are you extending the arm too? Because I often hear, like, I remember Rob Bernacki saying that extension and rotation is always, makes a lot of these finishes so much quicker and better.
Percent. Yeah. It just I think every arm bar is different. You just have to know how to adjust to it. Like even every turning side arm bar isn't going to be finished the same way, right? How do I adjust to the thumb? How do I adjust to the pit of the elbow? How do I stay behind that elbow in a fashion where I can break the arm, right? Because just because you're in that arm bar position, in everyone's arm's different too. Like you have a long arm or a short arm or a flexible elbow or something like that. You have to adjust to all those things, right? So how do I keep that arm in a position where I can break it effectively? And I think I think I do a decent job teaching it. I think some of that just comes with being behind an arm or being behind an arm consistently and understanding which way that arm needs to not go to actually break, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like your wording, being behind the arm.
Yeah. I tell a lot of people, you don't necessarily like a lot of people think thumb to the sky, hip to the sky, and you can finish an armbar that way. And don't get me wrong, you definitely can, right? It works, but like how do I stay right behind that elbow on a consistent basis, no matter where that arm is moving, so I can consistently put pressure on that elbow? Right? And sometimes that's over my hip or it's over my opposite hip. It's not always center. It's not, the thumb isn't always turned towards the sky. Sometimes the thumb's turned out this way and I'm bringing it over my hip and thigh to get a good break versus right over the center line. There's a bunch of ways to get good finishes and it's not always just straight up and down.
I remember hearing Carl Provec say a similar thing. I mean, it's just a different descriptor of the way you're saying it is like just finding the fulcrum, right? Which can move in
Exactly.
different places, like you're saying, your thigh, your hip, your wherever it may
Yeah.
be.
I've always said, one thing that I think made me good at jujitsu was having a natural understanding of the way things don't want to go and making them go that way. Kind of like
I like that.
having a natural understanding of what things don't want to do and kind of making them do that.
Your style seems very offensive. Were you ever like, did you start out that way or were you a counterpuncher? I know you came from a wrestling background, a very successful wrestling background in your particular area,
Sure.
but I get the feeling that your style has always been more offensive. Is that a correct assumption or not?
100%. I've always tried to be an offensive player. I definitely have a better defensive game now, but used to be like when I first started, I was so good and like I've had a little bit of natural talent and a little bit of natural athleticism where actually when I'd get into those defensive positions, I'd struggle. Like you got someone that got to a dominant position, I'd really struggle in those areas at times where like I've really taken that time where a lot of people see me now being very offensive and they sometimes think I'm only offensive, but I actually have a really, really good defensive game and I spend a lot of time letting people into really bad positions and working my way out of those positions now. That's something I've really developed, especially in the past 5 years.
So how are you training that? I mean, are you doing, I'm always fascinated by late stage defense and how people are training that, especially without, breaking yourself.
Yeah, this is how I tell people to do it all the time. Start with a smaller person that you trust that probably doesn't have the ability to break you, even like, depending on who you are. If you're 115 pounds, it's going to be hard to find someone smaller than you that's not a child, right? I'm luckily, a bigger guy that's a little bit stronger where I can take someone. I usually won't do this with a white belt because they just don't have even the skill level yet to understand breaking mechanics. But a lot of the time, I'll start with like, maybe a blue belt, right? A blue belt, sometimes a female, sometimes a male. It really depends who I'm working with or what I'm trying to do. But let's say I want to practice armbar escapes. Like I'm gonna let them armbar me, and a pretty good chance, like no matter what they do, they probably won't be able to armbar me with my knowledge level, right? I practice that on a blue belt, and then I move it up to a purple belt, and then I move it up to a brown belt, and I move it up to like, a black belt. And then if it fails, I kind of go back and I go, all right, what do I have to figure out? Why is it working here, but it's not working there? And that's kind of what I do because, one tough thing, for us up here is that we don't have a lot of instruction. Alex and I, we have each other, right, which we can bounce ideas off of. And, there's instructionals out there, but, the two of us don't really have anyone we can ask those questions to unless, we have the opportunity to have one of those better guys in front of us, which I'll always pick their brain if I do. But it's a lot of my jujitsu has been trial and error. When I first started doing it, I would like I would watch the UFC and do my best to remember a move and then try it on my friends. And that's how, you're talking back in 2010, 2013, before there was instructionals and all that stuff. Or if there was instructionals, they were on a camcorder DVD. But that's kind of like I've always had that trial and error style where I've taught myself and done a lot of like just putting myself in those positions I want to be in and practicing and trying to remember what I see. And I can still kind of do that today, even though there's a lot more information that I can access.
What are your thoughts on seminars?
I like them. I have no problem with seminars. I do seminars myself as well as, if the right person's up and, I think it'll be a good seminar for my students, I'll send them to it. We're still a pretty small academy, so some of these bigger guys that I'd be willing to host usually want, an upfront fee, which we can't afford at this point. But in the future, I'm totally willing and totally down to do stuff like that. I'm hoping that, as we grow, we can do more and more and work with more and more people. I'm hoping, as well as with finding my own success, maybe at higher level competition, as well as just growing through social media, it provides more and more opportunities for us.
Can you give me like an aha moment in terms of your jujitsu?
Yeah, I mean, you can go back to kind of what I said earlier with training with Gordon. Being in a small area where jiu-jitsu isn't, on that level, having those opportunities to train with someone at Gordon's level was some eye-opening stuff for me. It was like, oh, okay, there's guys that, back then there were still guys around that were better than me, but it wasn't that level. It wasn't like there's people out there that can play with you like a child. And that was kind of an eye-opener for me. And, anytime I got to work with Gordon, which I only got to work with him, I think 3 times, I sucked up as much knowledge and as much information as you can as I can. Alex said that a lot. He's like, dude, whenever you trained with Gordon, it was like you made a leap in your game instantly. So those were definitely some aha moments for me for sure.
What a privilege, to have that opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah, BJJ Fanatics, with Alex working there, as well as like me having a good connection now with Michael Zanga, because I give Zanga privates 2, 3 times a week sometimes. It's been really good to us. It presents a lot of opportunity, and I try to take advantage of anything that I can, especially when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Any opportunity that's presented, you'll see me kind of jump on it whenever I can.
Was there ever a time you wanted to quit and why?
Yeah, well, quit, not so much, but step back away from it where I wasn't focused on competing or becoming better. I was running another company where I was building cabinetry, doing custom cabinetry. I was doing pretty well, starting to make good money. That's 2 years ago now. So it was well, whatever, 29, 30. And, I was dealing with my knee problems. I had my wife. We wanted to have a kid, right? We want to buy a house, this stuff. And I'm like, well, this construction company is doing pretty well. No one does construction anymore. It's a golden time to, if I want to grow this business into something else, I got to go all into it. And then, of course, I did the opposite. I opened a jiu-jitsu school. And if you can't tell by now, the way I am, I'm going to go all into whatever I do. So, as soon as I opened that school, especially when we decided to open our own like brick and mortar location where it was going to be my main source of income, I really needed to buckle down and make sure that it was successful. And so I took away from that construction business and I went all in on jujitsu. And so now I'm kind of like in the past year, I've gotten a lot more remotivated to kind of achieve some of those goals I had a few years back. I wouldn't say I ever stopped, but there was a time where I just didn't care as much.
Let's say that I'm a day one white belt and I walk into your academy. What am I going to experience?
I don't think it's much different than any other academy. We kind of bring everyone in. We try to, like, if you're day one, you know nothing. We try to ease you into it. Like, we're not going to push you beyond your limits. whatever, we let you train to your comfortability. And then, the thing we try to do is make sure you have a good time. You smile, you laugh, you enjoy it, and you leave with an experience. One thing my gym gets most compliments on is atmosphere. Honestly, we get a good amount of compliments on level of jujitsu, but even my buddies that train at other places and, they have their affiliations elsewhere, they tell me that you cannot beat the atmosphere at Precision Jiu-Jitsu. And that's one thing I really pride myself on, is having a gym that a lot of people want to be at and enjoy, and the jiu-jitsu is just a bonus.
That's awesome. Do you have a kids program?
Yeah, we do. We started it up 4 or 5 months ago now. It was doing pretty good. It was booming
Wow.
up until the summer came. A lot of parents had pulled their kids out due to just summer activities and vacations and stuff like that. But we're
Mm-hmm.
hoping in the fall it kind of bumps back up, and we can kind of grow from there.
What are your future goals with the academy and your career in general?
Just have a good group of competitors, and a place that I can call home for a long time, where people are real happy with. Like I said, that atmosphere thing is big for me. I'm glad people enjoy being there, because I'm still on the younger side. I'm not old, I'm not young, but at some point, I'm probably going to stop competing. So I just want to have a long-term academy where people really enjoy themselves, and we can grow it to a place where it's my only job all the time, and that I can continue to put out good jujitsu practitioners, guys that can compete at all levels on any stage, as well as, just have a place where people who don't want to compete and just want to have a good time, really just enjoy themselves and learn good jujitsu.
Let's talk about the leg lock game a little bit here. Are there like positions? I mean, you mentioned deep half and things like that. Are there other positions that you feel are sort of, I don't want to say like antiquated or anything, but like perhaps like you kind of try to avoid, and techniques you're trying to avoid uh, that seem to just open yourself up to more sort of vulnerable type of, lower percentages or things like that within the no-gi game, if you will.
Sure. I mean, like I said, even with the no-gi, I mean, I should say not with the no-gi, even with the deep half, right? Like, there's still ways to be effective with it. I think deep half is good when you use it the right way. The other big one I really try to avoid is people passing on their knees while they're sitting on their butt, right? That's like really, really bad structure, really bad posture jiu-jitsu. Those are the only two positions. And it's really that sitting on your knees thing that gets me, or starting on your knees. I think those are just two bad ways to go, for jujitsu nowadays. I don't mind starting on the mat, right? But starting two people on their knees, or even trying to pass from your knees effectively, is pretty hard. That would be the only other position I think I kind of get on people about, where it's like, if you're sitting on your knees, it's pretty easy, especially if your weight's not forward, to get kicked in the chest and sent backwards. If you try to go what people used to call combat base, where one knee down, one knee up, like that's just a completely useless position. You're going to get ankle picked, you're going to get swept, you're going to get whatever. There's definitely some ways to be slightly effective, two knees down with your head forward, but usually you're still going to have to come up to your feet to get those passes going. It's very rare that you're going to be effective on your knees without actually coming up to your feet.
Can you give me a non jujitsu childhood fondest memory?
Yeah, so that's always a tough one for me, because I actually don't have a ton of memory in my childhood. I don't know if it's head injuries or whatever, but I've always struggled with memory in my childhood, even high school years. I don't really remember all that well, but I do know from watching video, or from what my parents tell me, I played football growing up, and I absolutely loved being on the football field as a kid. I played pee wee football. I always did, just like jujitsu. Is like one of those things that I pushed incredibly hard in. I always wanted to excel in. That's always kind of been my personality, is whatever I do, I'm going to do it to the best of my abilities and try to be the absolute best at it. Even if I don't achieve it, I'm going to damn sure try to do it.
So, Shawn, where can we get more information about you and everything that you're up to?
Biggest and easiest place to find me is going to be Instagram. My Instagram handle is Shawn Melanson 160. That's where I give out free information every day. I'm hopefully starting a YouTube page at some point here soon. I'll probably jump on TikTok, as well as, whatever other social media sites there are out there, to get my jujitsu out there. As well as, if you want to learn more from me, I got gonna be pretty soon, 5 BJJ Fanatics instructions out there. You guys should definitely check those out. And like I said, if you want free information, jump on my page. If you want a little bit more in-depth breakdowns of that information, those BJJ Fanatics instructionals are going to be your way to go.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for listening, watching out there. I'm your host, Adolfo Fronda. Consider being a VIP and all that stuff. Go buy your salt electrolytes. And thanks again. Give us a thumbs up, subscribe. Shawn, thank you so much for making the time. Really appreciate it. Hope we can do it again in the future.
I would love to. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. See you guys next time.